and this is the Diploma of Alcohol and Other Drugs. This is first session of another module, new module tonight. It's CHCDIV001, Work with Diverse People. It's session 1 of 3, like I said. So I'll just start with the acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, AOD Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Obviously, that's the housekeeping. I've got the word there. This is just the expectations of you, of us, and us of you, just the way we run the classes. And another little thing that we want to do, when we change the course, which it gets changed regularly based on obviously government expectations, but we want to also base it around what your expectations are. So it would be great if you could give us some feedback so that you can guide the next plans and the route of the course as it changes over the next few months. Obviously, I'd love a 5-star review, yes, but in the end, give us feedback, give us some direction. Otherwise, if you don't comment, then it's out of your hands. So just tonight, we're going to be starting off with working with diverse people. Looking tonight, by the end of the session, we'll be looking at culture, society, socialization, social norms, social roles and class, poverty and disadvantage, cultural awareness. Hi, Babu. So just as a bit of a comment about what it is. So we've got 2 modules over the next 6 weeks. We've got this one for 3 weeks, work with diverse people, then which is DIV001, diversity. Then the following 3 weeks after that, we've got DIV002, diversity again, and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety. So it's 6 weeks of, these are standard modules that like the core modules that any diploma you do in Australia is going to have work with diverse people and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety. They're both very important to a healthy working environment, no matter what the environment you're working in or the industry. So with this one, this unit describes the skills and knowledge required to work respectfully with people from diverse social, cultural groups and situations, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This unit applies to all workers in any industry in Australia. With these 2, if somebody hasn't started any assessments yet, this is a great time to do your first assessments, because these are a lot of the knowledge is going to be pre-known from living in Australia. Really, you do have to do research to back that up, but there's a lot of this that is going to be pre-known, really, pre-knowledge. And
recording in progress.
So yeah, this one, apart from a lot of research to do for both modules, this one that we're doing now, working with diverse people, has a group role play to do, which is perfect perfect as the first role play to do. If you've never done any yet, this is a great one to jump in on. Partly because even if you don't want to get assessed on the role play, you can help somebody else out, because when somebody's getting assessed on one of these role plays, we need a few extras in the role play. So that's these. My calendar, because it's a new module. If you need anything, then send me an email or jump onto my calendar and book something. With Discord, I'm sure you've heard about it. But originally for gamers communicating online while they're playing whatever games they're playing, you need your own account registered with your own email address. So once you've got your own email address account set up with Discord, then you're going to accelerate and you accept the invite from Discord Accelerate, and then the idea is that you can get on here, and whether it's contacting other learners to get somebody to come and join your role play in any of the streams. Just because you're doing AOD doesn't mean you have to stay in this one. You can join any. But as well as all of that, we're getting more and more really good resources, all set up for how to do a great role play. Do's and don'ts. Different modules are starting to come on here and have specific support for each module. So it's very, very helpful. This is the learner guide for the next 3 weeks. So looking over it, a lot about sociology, culture, the way our culture works, the way it doesn't work as well sometimes, but the way that it has to run for a healthy workplace and a healthy culture. And then I'll look at the assessments later. So I'll just jump onto the PowerPoint again. What is culture? Not really. Didn't really want to look at that short video yet. So culture, it's shared ideas, it's ways of doing things, material items and objects, non-material elements, knowledge, values, and beliefs. So basically that's implying that you could have one family culture, a family of origin is the way they talk about it. Your parents and your grandparents, that would be your family of origin. So you could have one family of origin culture, but then your family, your current family, the family that you're blended into or growing right now, can take on a different culture. And you could be in many different cultures, whether it's a male Australian culture, a female Australian culture, a different gendered culture, different family culture, different age culture. So because of who we are, we're going to blend into lots of different cultures. So shared culture would be the language, the values, the beliefs, the customs, norms and expectations, what society produces. And it grows. Culture is alive. That's the key thing. Culture is alive and it grows and it changes over time. So culture is learned. Culture is learned as we grow up, influences how we think and interpret the world. So because we've been born into a certain culture and we've been brought up in a certain culture, it does influence, it dictates, and it controls the way we think about society to start our life. Doesn't mean we have to stay like that, but it does dictate where we started. This, I'm going to put this one in. This is the worst video ever. I'm just going to put it in the chat. And if you're watching the recording, it's worth a watch because it's so terrible about what it says about Australia. You don't have to watch it now, Nepal and Babu. It's awful. So society, on the other hand, so we've got culture. We know where we are with culture, society. Society and culture are linked. Society would be the group of people who share common beliefs and ways of living. So with society, society is made up of all of the different cultures that we belong to and that we're part of. Culture is part of society, and society encompasses all of the culture, all the different cultures and communities that we're part of. Socialization, that we quite often it's who we become as we grow up. We get socialized by our culture and society, and we grow into the culture, we grow into society. But then coming from the UK to Australia takes some socialization. If you've moved from another country and come into Australia, then eventually you get socialized into Australian society. It can be a culture shock. If you're born and brought up Aussie, then you don't necessarily see how much of a culture shock it can be to be socialized into Australian society, but it is quite a shock. But socialization teaches us how to be members of our own society and culture. So it's the unwritten rules. Our families have unwritten rules. Our families might have written rules, but the unwritten rules that our family tells us as we grow up. Equally, Australia, our society, our socialization has unwritten rules as well. Imitating behaviors and attitudes of those around us. This is how we grow. This is how we learn from being a tiny one into an adult. We imitate the behaviors of older people. That's good and bad, obviously. With certain bits of Australian culture, younger people learn that very, very easily through the imitation of older people, and then it gets passed on. And then there's good things as well about Australian culture. The mateship, the respect for the senior age group, the respect for the vets in the military. There's a high level of respect for certain people. As I said, there's negative bits as well that I'm not going to focus on. There's no need to. But family is the primary agent of socialization. This is what people have been studying for many, many years. That our family, our family is the way we become part of society and the way we get socialized. Eventually, our family, as we grow up, we start to disregard our family as who we want to learn from. It can happen at different ages. Sometimes it's a bit younger, sometimes as we get a little bit older. But eventually we disregard our family quite often, and then we look to other people. Unfortunately, it might be social media, it might be media stars, sports stars, and they are the people that socialize us into contemporary society. Again, that's got good things and it's got bad things. So social norms vary from culture to culture. They vary according to social roles and they vary across time. What's normal 20 years ago isn't necessarily normal anymore in society. And what's normal today for some people isn't normal for other people. So an example would be helping an old lady across the road. As I was brought up to respect that having said that, it isn't necessarily a social norm anymore. Maybe somebody doesn't necessarily want to be helped across the road because somebody feels very independent, and is happy to tell people that. Nowadays, we might not, some people might not have the respect for the seniors that I mentioned before, that the aged members of society, it used to be looked up to, that they've lived, they've got wisdom, they've got the seniority, so that's where the respect goes. And maybe some people are growing up without that. So obviously it can vary across time, and different things are going to change in the future. And what's normal now in society isn't necessarily going to be normal in the future. So social class is less noticeable. It's here in Australia, definitely, but it's not as noticeable as it would be in other countries. Even the US and a lot of Western European countries, UK and Europe, there is a distinct social class there. And if you look for it, you can see it in Australia, but it's very mixed. Um, it's a lot easier for somebody from a lower, perceived lower class to move up because they've worked really, really hard, and they've got a lot of assets, they've got a lot of capital, they've done really, really well in the business, and they move up into a higher financial social class. They might never ever see themselves as out of the working class that they came from, but purely by having a massive amount of capital or financial support to fall back on means they're no longer part of the working class that they might have come from. Power, privilege, reward, and obligations are distributed. We don't have as big wealthy social class that are people that are born into wealth. And we see that across the world, but not as much in Australia. Divisions between the richest and poorest members of society, again, very strong in other countries, but not as much in Australia. And again, if we think about poor, the poor people, poor, we have to compare poor with the rest of the world. We have to compare rich with the rest of the world. So there's not as many obscenely rich people in Australia. And while some parts of Australia can be seen as third world, because of the way that the poverty is, it's not as big. So it could be equivalent, but it's not as big. Poverty and disadvantage. Absolute poverty. So these are sociological terms. Absolute poverty is when you look right across the world. There's on a map. There's the we call it the 1040 window, I think. The above and below the equator, that strip right across the middle that has a lot of the third world countries in it. And a lot of these countries are absolutely poor. They're in a lot of their population are living in absolute poverty. So that's the poorest people in the world. Relative poverty would be looking in a specific country and saying, okay, while somebody in Australia is living in extreme poverty in Australia, we do have government handouts. We do have a free health system that covers most things. So nobody should really die of nobody should need to die because of lack of housing, lack of clothing, lack of food. That should never happen in Australia. Never. It should never happen in any of the first world countries. Australia, UK, US. It shouldn't, but it does, unfortunately. So relative or comparative poverty, less income or less assets than others. And all we're saying is we're defining the rich and the poor by comparing them with each other. And then we've got generational wealth or generational poverty. It's affecting multiple generations of families, social groups, or community. When we're talking about cultural awareness, that's important for for both modules that we're looking at, this one and the next one. Cultural awareness is thinking about our own culture. Like I said, we could be part of many different cultures. Just a sec. So we could be part of many, many different cultures, but it's having an awareness of other people's culture as well. It's really important. The government's been a lot of first world countries, governments have been saying a long time now that while it's not wrong to have our own culture and have our own culture that we're born into, or the cultures that we've been born into, having an awareness of other cultures is important for a healthy mind, a good perspective on the rest of the world. So having cultural awareness is respecting other cultures as well. Being aware of your own culture and others, recognizing cultural differences, and reflecting on the cultural sensitivity. So being sensitive to other cultures, not just thinking about our own. We might be patriotic. We might think that our own culture has been the great place for us to grow up in, but we've got to be sensitive to other people's cultures as well, because that's been a great place for them to grow up to. We do have to ask honest questions and understand cultural differences, though. So it's not about just knowing our own culture. It's about asking the questions about how are we different. Difference, like on the photo there, difference isn't bad. Difference has got to be respected, and difference is one of the things that helps a workplace work. Difference is the place that makes a healthy society run healthily, really. So when we're developing cultural awareness and cultural sensitivity, admit what you don't know, develop an awareness of your own ideas, take an interest in other cultures, don't judge, check assumptions, develop empathy. Empathy, obviously, working in community services and knowing all of the role plays that you have to do, and you're expected to show empathy in all of the different role plays about somebody that's had a different culture from ourselves. Quite often, if that's a role play, whether that's because they've gone through a lot of addiction, they've gone through a lot of trauma, they've gone through a lot of homelessness, they've gone through a lot of poverty. We have empathy with them. We might not understand it, but we can have empathy with them, and we're not going to judge. It's not wrong that we might not have grown up in the same trauma or addiction or mental health issues that they have. It's not a bad thing that we haven't had them. So we don't judge them because of that, and we don't judge ourselves negatively because we haven't. But we can have empathy. Empathy being not understanding fully what that person might have gone through, but we can see how it could affect us if we were in the situation. I will give you this video. This is a lot better. 5 minutes long for anybody that's watching it. Oops. This is the website there. If you're watching it on watching the recording of the class. So I'll put this in the chat and we'll come to 5 minutes. Looking at the difference between cultural safety and cultural awareness, and putting them both together and having them both as important. It mentioned that we do have biases. We do have bias. We're born with bias, and we have to reduce the assumptions that we make on our bias. We might never get rid of bias, but we stop making the cultural assumptions and the society assumptions that we jump to straight away. It also mentioned the point of indigenous communities across the world. For Canada, example, and there's other nations that their indigenous cultures are also in a lower economic state where there's some serious social problems going on there. The big question, obviously, is how much is from the culture, from the indigenous culture, and how much is from the controlling culture that is holding them down. That's a massive question that we have here as well. So when we look at cultural competence, cultural competency is understanding and communicating and interacting effectively across cultures. That means that despite my culture, despite me studying another culture, I can still communicate across to a different culture. And when, like I said, when I'm meaning culture, I'm not just talking about race. I could be talking about age culture. I could be talking about gender culture. I could be talking about race culture, religious culture. So cultural competency would be being able to communicate and get a point across and understand somebody from a completely different culture. It's a good skill. It's not something people are born with, but it's a good skill to develop, especially in community services. So cultural awareness, looking at diversity, open to ongoing learning, reflect on attitudes and beliefs. This would be, I guess, cultural awareness is the minimum that a lot of people would expect, to not just be absorbed in my own culture, but actually become aware, study, and learn about other cultures. Being culturally aware doesn't mean I'm going to be culturally competent. So just because I know about Indigenous Australian and all the different cultures that are part of Australia and make up Australia now, doesn't mean I can communicate with them or that I value any of them even. I might still be quite arrogant and ignorant about other cultures, even though I know a lot. So when we're looking at culture and society, we've got all of the different things that make up our culture, the way we see it from where we are. So we've got language. A change in language becomes a slightly different culture. All the experiences that I've had in my culture, the people in my culture with me, and when they've experienced the same things, become part of my culture. The certain knowledge, the education, the schooling, that's all of the growth in that area becomes part of my culture, and the people that have shared it are part of my culture. The dignity of who I am and the respect that we have towards each other, the relationships and obligations that we share. If big families have lots of relationships. So there's going to be a dominant culture there with lots of family members and lots of relationships. And then we've got the individual differences. Even the individual differences are going to be making up part of culture, because the difference between me and somebody in my culture isn't as big as the difference between me and somebody who isn't in my culture. So we've got to become aware of our own cultural perspectives, beliefs, and values. That's the most important thing. That's the first step, becoming aware of our own cultural perspectives. This is moving into one of the assessments, looking at your own culture, looking at where your culture's come from, how you've grown up in your culture, and reflecting on that is one of the research project assessments. And then reflecting and thinking about how that's made us and how much do we need to change? Like, all right, we've become aware of who we are and all the cultural perspectives that we've got, but does that stop us from being the best community services worker that we can be? Working in AOD or working in mental health, we've got to reduce certain aspects that are going to be judgmental or controlling or forcing opinions on other people, forcing our opinions on other people when that's not what we're meant to be doing. So now looking at the impact of mainstream culture and social structures on diverse groups, obviously Australia and the UK in many ways, inherited from, not the UK, sorry, the US, though there seems to be massive differences across the world now. Inherited from British and European social institutions, other cultures may not feel part of mainstream society. So if you can't directly link yourself to British or European social institutions, then it might be a disconnect from the dominant culture in Australia, US, UK, and not quite understanding what mainstream means, and mainstream being obviously controlled by sport, movie stars that are probably American and earning way, way, way more money than most of the rest of society. So that we've got these people leading mainstream culture that mainstream culture wants to be like them, be like the leaders, but we never ever will be, because most people will never be the movie stars and the sports legends that people are looking up to. So it's a weird one with the culture. When we've got marginalized, devalues and disadvantaged, devalues the disadvantaged. So the people that don't feel like they fit into mainstream culture, or that want to be part of mainstream culture, but they don't seem to fit in. Once they're marginalized and they're on the fringe, the periphery, then they start to get devalued because of the controllers of mainstream culture are saying that anybody that doesn't fit in isn't meant to be here. That was an important point just to finish. Not many slides tonight. I think obviously there's not a huge group in the class, but the negative effects of loss of culture through oppression or migration. In Australia, I've mentioned before that when young people in a rehab, one of the first things that we notice that young people stuck in addiction in a rehab, they fall into this massively. They feel like they wanted to be part of mainstream society, but because of chasing after the heroes that they never really will be part of, feeling marginalized once addiction gets hold. And somewhere in the middle of all that, their family culture, the family of origin, the culture of the grandparents and their parents was lost after the young people were chasing after after mainstream society. And one of the first things that really, really works with young people in addiction in rehabs is getting them connected with their family culture. And that's whether that's young Indigenous Australians, young Indigenous Muslims, young Indigenous Christians, young Indigenous, I don't know whether I said that right, young Indigenous Australians, young Muslims, young Christians, not Indigenous ones, young Christians, and looking at helping them connect with their family, the family role models that the grandparents are looking to, the role models in their direct community, getting them connected with them is a massive step towards them working through the addiction and having some self-value, and moving away from the addiction as well, which was huge. That's it for the slides. Because of that and the module that we're doing tonight, I'm going to have a break here, early break. So normal questions, normal quiz, only 13 questions, pretty straightforward. What's the definition of diversity? What's the concept of diversity in the workplace? In your own words, explain the following concepts. This is all in the PowerPoint. Though, having said that, in your own words, you can use the words of the PowerPoint, or you can use the words from the learning guide if you want. Identify qualities a person may present with the definition of for each of the key areas of diversity listed below. And when we're looking at diversity because when you think about it, the clients that we're working with could be part of a different group that links to one of these. Literally, absolutely any. Describe the purpose of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Pretty straightforward. Do human rights necessarily cover all human needs? It's a good comparison. What are the frameworks, approaches, and instruments used in the workplace to ensure human rights and anti-discrimination are provided for? Which international legal framework sets out the rights of people with disabilities generally and in respect of employment? Probably not the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Probably not the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Probably not that one neither. Could be this one. Which two legal frameworks in Australia consist of anti-discrimination legislation at both Commonwealth and state territory levels, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of disability in the context of employment? What are the rights and responsibilities of employees, employers, and customers regarding human rights and anti-discrimination? I was saying earlier that these assessments are pretty straightforward. If you've worked in any employment area much, you've probably done a lot of this, maybe been on a course or maybe had some work training on it. And a lot of this is going to be background knowledge to a lot of people. Which Australian organisation deals with complaints regarding breaches of human rights and discrimination? When processing complaints about sex, race, disability, and age discrimination, there are 5 steps to follow. Place them in order below. So this is quite a specific thing that when we're advocating for a client, or if we are making a complaint about a service that we've been taking part of, or we're making a complaint in an industry or in a service that we work for, legally, it's meant to go through a specific process, and you've got to put that process in the right order. Off the top of my head, I can't remember whether making the complaint is the first thing or not, but I think it's listed in the learner guide. Read the scenario below and answer the questions. Mario is a part-time support worker of First Access. He holds a Cert 4 in Community Services and is studying the Diploma of Mental Health. Since he started his job at the service, he was never approved to participate in any professional development sessions, while other support workers completed 2 sessions each year. So straight away, that's against government legislation. No, not against government legislation. It's against discrimination in one way, at least. One day he overheard 2 staff members whispering about him. They said he doesn't need professional development because he learned enough in his other diploma course at TAFE that he's just a young guy and it's better if they keep telling him how to do things. So there's quite a few areas of discrimination there now. 12, you're a new support worker at First Access. You notice that during the day visit program, Deirdre, a client with intellectual disabilities, always sits by herself at a little table further away from everyone else. She rarely participates in fun or interactive activities, but plays games on an iPad with headphones on. The support workers hardly interact with her and always tell her family when they call to check on her that she has been having a good time and joining most group activities. When you asked Morris, the coordinator, if you could support Deirdre in playing bingo with the group, his answer was, no, let her sit there at the table. She's quite there, and it's easier only to watch her now and again. Also, bingo is a game for fast thinkers, and she'll be a burden for the others in the group. So, what's been going on there? And finally, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. Ryan has recently finished the Cert 4 in Community Services. He's passed all the assessments, and the feedback from his trainers has been very positive. Ryan is very excited to get a job. He inquires at First Access, his placement organisation, but unfortunately they do not have any positions available at the moment. The director promises to let him know if any jobs will be advertised, as she was very impressed with his work. Also, the director recommended him to another community centre, as she knew they were looking to hire qualified support workers. Ryan applies for that position, but has no response. He decides to call the centre to find out why he was not considered for an interview. He's put through to someone called Meg, who says, oh, Ryan, that's right, I heard about you. Yes, the coordinator of the centre didn't want to put your application through further because they thought the clients in our centre may feel uncomfortable having a male Muslim support worker, as none of them is from that culture. Ryan hangs up in shock, can't believe what he's just heard. So answering what's going on there. First Access, just in case you're watching the video, you're not quite sure what First Access is. First Access is the make-believe community service agency that you're all pretending to work for in all of the role plays. So in pretty much every role play, there'll be a different client or a different staff member that you are meant to mimic or follow in First Access. It's completely made up, but there is a website that you can get all of your documents from, and this is the Housing and Homeless Policy and Procedure. So it's completely made up, like an artificial agency, but it's for us. We use all the policies and procedures. They've got domestic family violence part, they've got dependence addiction bit, they've got a young people bit and a career planning bit. Everything that like Anglicare or Salvo is one of the bigger community service agencies would have. And when we get to a module where you need this, there's a login. We all have the same login, password and user login, but it's mainly for the policies and procedures and documents, email templates, work health and safety template, case notes template. This is where you get it all. So that was the questions. The project is a research report. For this task, you're required to conduct research using online and offline resources. Obviously, the learning guide is going to be the first step, but it's working from the learning guide so that you can do further research off the back of this. Offline resources include learning guides, obviously, and other available material related to cultural diversity, magazines, journals, research reports, all online, or books that you might have seen. Use the template below to help you document your research, add and modify space as needed. So this is the template. You just answer the questions. That's what the research report becomes. And just taking note of the words that are used. I'll go back to that in a sec. Ensure that you include appropriate references within your report where information has been quoted or used. So any information that you've got, make sure you cite your sources. We don't want plagiarism. If you don't, even when you know that it's not your work, if you don't put in a reference of where you got it from, then you're saying that it's your work. So we need you to make sure you get your resources cited. So brief background of the purpose of the research here, a couple of sentences, basically. Details, so that's just a short description, really. So research has different points of view. Research has sometimes pros and cons of the different arguments that are mentioned. So list, that's just a few sentences. So you're researching, looking at a few sentences for each one, and then looking at spirituality and religion and culture in your answers. So you've got 3 points there. Research again. Like when we research, for somebody to research one point of view is not research. It's not, it doesn't come up as good enough. It's not acceptable. So when you're researching, you're going to be researching different points of view or different perspectives on what somebody said. That's pretty straightforward, that one. What social, political, and economic issues affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? Read at least 2 paragraphs about each issue who identified its impact. I'll get you the module for the, no, I'll get you the learning guide for the next module. That will actually help here. You can answer that off the internet. You can answer that from the learning guide that we've got for this. But the next module is about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So that can help with that. Research at least 3 important cultural customs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and write at least 1 paragraph about each. Yeah, okay. Consider how Western society and culture have affected Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's engagement with services. That's pretty straightforward. It's not one massive arguments, just 3 simple examples. Identify 2 issues that impact Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and describe what programs or projects have been developed. So it's looking at the programs and projects. We might know about the impacts that have happened to Indigenous cultures, but because of the course that you're doing, we want to know the programs. that have been developed. And what are 4 issues that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people face when engaging with health and community services? Explain. So explain is give reasons. It's not just a description of facts, it's given reasons why or reasons of explanation how. Using at least 2 paragraphs, write about how Australia's diverse community has been impacted. That's pretty much just a short history lesson in 2 paragraphs. Fairly easy. Conclusion, summarize your findings. So just take out all the main points and put the main points in the bottom. And your references. Right, okay, so APA references. Sometimes the research projects don't expect this, but this one is. APA is the author, the date, and then the book title. So, like, if it was me, it might be Rate 2025, My Favorite Foods. So it would be Rate D 2025, My Favorite Food is the book. Or if there's another reference, it might be Rate D 2025 and 2020, My Favorite COVID Hangouts, or whatever it was. So it would be listing the book titles by that name, by that author. You don't always have to do that, but with this one you do. So that's the research project. The role play. This is a great one. I mentioned it earlier on. This is great to start doing your role plays, Xavier. Great place to jump in. Basically, I've got recordings of this of other people, so I can show you how it works. This is all scripted. You don't have to deviate from the script even. It's like if you've never done a role play before, this is it. We've got 5 people in the role play. This is you. If you're getting assessed, if it's your role play, you've got you being a support worker, and then all of these 4 other people that we need. So when we do this role play, pretty much we just get 5 people together and we take turns having the support worker get assessed. The first scene, it's Ryan is an Indigenous guy and Hader is a Muslim, and there's conflict. So in the conflict, then Diane shouts to Hader, enough is enough, you two, why can't you just be like the rest of us, for God's sake? So we've got conflict with Ryan and Hader, then Diane gets involved. That is the first scene. So if it's your role play and you're getting assessed, you're not in the first scene. Scene 2 is when you hear what's been going on, and then you jump into the middle of all that, and you have to calm the friction. You have to calm them all down and communicate in a manner that shows respect to all of the 4 colleagues involved in the conflict. So this is what you've got to do. Then in the third scene, your supervisor has heard all the commotion, and then you go to the supervisor and say, look, this is what's happened between Ryan and Hader and Diane, and this is what I'm going to do about it. And this is what I suggest that the company or the agency could do about it, because there's clearly a bit of cultural conflict going there. So what can we do? And you're making suggestions to the supervisor, and that's it. So I think each one's like 5 minutes long. Yeah, that'll make up a 15-minute role play easily. So that's the story. again, that's what it said. It will be, yes, Nepal. Be a bit shorter. Or if you don't get a chance to do it in class, you can do this with 5 mates. Oh, sorry, 4 mates. There's 5 people in the role play. You can do it with other people. It's not compulsory that it's a class role play, but um, it's quite often easier to just get it done in class. Obviously, not tonight because we haven't even got a class of 5 people. But that,
Okay,
yeah,
so Joanne, so it's not necessary that it has to be like class people. We can do it with anyone, right?
that's correct. Yeah,
Okay, but you know what? It's like I'm struggling a lot to coordinate with people. At times, it's just that they are at work and they are not free. So at times, I'm not free. It's very difficult because if it's like 2 people involved in the role play, it's easier to
yeah,
done. But if it's like many people involved, it's like too difficult to manage. Remember,
yeah,
there was some assessment in which there was like funding as well as presentation and the project part. So
yeah.
I haven't completed because there are like 4 people involved in that. Because of that only, I'm lagging behind.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll talk. I've got some ideas for that later.
Yeah,
Well,
because it's just a
uh,
suggestion. Because if it's like 2 people, it's easy to manage. I was like earlier in the notion that maybe, I can finish this course, uh, you know, uh, before this session ends and all. But because of this role play, unless and until you have got competency in all the subjects, after that only you will be like getting your diploma degree. Before that,
yeah,
I think there is no chance. And because of this role play, I'm like all stuck in between.
yeah. I'll mention some ideas I've got for the other one later. But with
Yeah.
this one, like, basically, if it's a normal role play where you have to find a client, I'll
Mm-hmm.
we'd just let you get on with that. But when
Okay.
if it's an assessor-led one, then I try and get them done in class. This
Mm-hmm.
one, because you need 4 other people, it's
Exactly.
it's so
Yeah.
much easier to get it all done in class. Um,
Okay. And see,
which
and
means
yeah, yeah.
which means over the next few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
if 5 people turn up, get it done. Like, just somebody just right, come on, let's get it sorted.
Okay.
Like, if Sarah comes and if Ian comes, then we just say, right, we've got 5 people. If somebody's leaving early, we'll get it done now. Having
Okay.
said that, it's just a notice that I'm away for 3 weeks, and Vicky's going to be jumping in instead. So
Mm-hmm.
Vicky will also be open to getting this role play done
Okay.
as quick as possible. Um,
Okay.
and if
Okay.
even to the point of beforehand or afterwards or in the middle of the class, we just got to get it done.
Okay. Not a
Uh,
problem. Okay.
all
Okay.
right.
Got it. Yeah.
Um,
And see, and unfortunately, there are like only 3 people in the class, right? So
I know,
I
yeah.
hope you understand my point.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
totally. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so that's that role play. That's task 3, and it's there. It's pretty much scripted for the other people. It's just you've got to think of some ideas. How would you calm conflict in an organization that's got a bit of racism and a bit of backbiting going on? What would you do? Pretty straightforward. So questions, the project, the role play, and then at the end we've got the reflection journal. Uh, Obviously, a lot of assessments, a lot of modules have a reflection in it. We've got to be reflective working, not just the PRP, personal reflective procedure, but this one as well. In this task, you're required to complete the provided reflective journal template by including a minimum of 1 example unless specified otherwise for each of the areas listed. You'll first reflect upon your own culture, second on workplace cultural diversity, and then finalize the reflective process in describing two instances when you recognized and responded to misunderstandings between people from diverse social and cultural backgrounds. So it's a bit like this project, looking at diversity and perspective, except it's all about you and the way you've been brought up and the way your family of origin, your culture of origin is contributing or starts the way you're thinking and where you can go from there. So this unit requires you to show evidence of your ability to reflect upon your own perspectives on diversity, identify areas of your own life that have been impacted by diversity, and identify the impact of your own culture on co-workers and on other people. You must use reflection to support inclusive work practices, work with awareness of own limitations, and social awareness as you identify and value diversity in the workplace and implement cultural safe practices. It's detailed. There's plenty of information there, but it's very, very straightforward. It's just there's lots of bits of information to fill in. So that's all of the assessments. Usually we would jump in to get these questions done, but I can't see a problem with still doing that. Just because like you guys are here doesn't mean that you can still use that time. We can still use that time for getting these done. Don't need to do breakout rooms, but the answers are so straightforward that I reckon if you do 4 questions each, I've already been over them, so there's no real difficult ones. If you do 4 questions each, then we'll do a feedback. What's 13? That's a big one, so we won't do 13. That's all right, Nepal. You can still do 4 questions each, and then we'll feedback. Any more than that, it's a bit of a heavy duty weight. So I'll turn the recording off.
All of the questions are.
It is, you're right. Go for it.
The first one is the definition of diversity is the second one is the answer. Let me open. Are you able to share the screen, Dwayne?
Yeah.
So diversity is the inclusion of individuals from various backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. So that's the answer. And the question 2, concept of diversity in the workplace, is the third one. The diversity in the workplace involves prompting inclusivity. That one. And the third one is cultural awareness. What is cultural awareness is you should know you're working with the different background people at the workplace. The impacts of the cultural awareness is there are so many impacts. It enhances the collaboration, it reduces the conflict, it brings the strong relationship, and obviously it's improved the communication between people. Cultural competency is respect their values, attitudes, and their belief. And the impacts of the cultural competency is professional growth, and it's improved the workplace culture as well. And the last one is the cultural safety is pretty much the first two of them. That's gone. The cultural safety is the first two of them, cultural awareness and cultural competency. And protect your own cultural safely as well. The impact is positive environment at work and trust and respect. And question 4 is that's quite detailed. But it's pretty simple. It's the definition of disability is the people who is physically or mentally challenged. And a recent survey says, it's find it interesting. A lot of people who's at work who got a disability, they're more creative than the normal human being. It says, and they are good with technology. They're good with
What
computers.
what where did you see that? That's really interesting.
Actually, I did see it somewhere. I was searching on the online resource. Maybe I can just find it later because yeah,
All
the
right,
recent
yeah, yeah,
study says yeah, because they're just spending more time on the computer and stuff, so they're more
yeah.
creative. They're really fast, and you know they obviously they're good in typing and stuff like those. So it says they're more creative at workplace compared to the
Okay.
normal human beings. That's interesting. The definition of cultural which touched before. The race is pretty the simple definition for the race is all of the living human beings in the earth. So they consider as a race. And ethnicity is what their religion, what their ancestry, what they believe, the background of their heritage is the ethnicity and the religion. So these all interconnected: race, ethnicity, religion, and spiritual. They all interconnected. So if you are following a ethnicity, you obviously follow on one religion, and you follow on spirituality as well. So they all connected each other. So it depends on the person.
Mm,
Same with the
mm,
gender, transgender, intersex, sexual orientation is LGBTQI plus. It's pretty common in all the workplaces now. So obviously, if you work in an organization, you should be doing that course once a year. So it's not only him or her. So there are so many genders at workplaces now. So it's good to do the training. And the last one is the generational. That's different sort of age group people obviously living in the same planet. Some called older generation, some called new generation, and they all have different lifestyle, different ethics in their life. But
mm,
obviously we're also living in the same planet. So that's the definition of generational. They're all pretty
mm.
straightforward.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's almost a break time, and I think we might as well leave it there for tonight.